is still home recovering from COVID. So is Rabbi Ruthie. So I'm the last clergy standing here at Har HaShem. So you can pray for them, you can pray for me. And they're both doing well. They're both on the road to recovery. They're both hanging in there. And I wish for them a speedily and mightily return to us. So, the Torah portion is Shoftim. And Shoftim is all about judges and laws and rules. And there's a lot of issues that come up in this Torah portion. But I want to confess out loud something that rabbis tend not to do. I seem to be doing a lot recently, even before this like Rosh Hashanah thing coming up. I'm wrestling with something that I want to talk to you about. And I welcome you to respond to me. You can write to me. You can give me a call. You can do fg@harhashem.org if you have something to share. I really welcome you to share constructive, thoughtful, caring, and generous messages. But I'll tell you what I'm wrestling with. You see, I was talking again, and this wasn't the first time that it happened, but somebody was here recently and said that they appreciated the service. They have another congregation they go to somewhere far, far away from Boulder County. And this person says that the rabbi talks about politics too much. You have a sense of where I'm going? So the rabbi talks about politics too much, and this person, who's a lovely, lovely person, like a really good, decent person, because I know this person from one of my past lives in a different congregation. I've seen this person, I know this person, I've worked with this person, but he says, I don't want to hear politics when I enter into the synagogue. If I do, I will leave. Now, I'm starting my 8th year here at Har HaShem. It's hard to believe. It feels much longer. And over the course of those 7 years and moving into my 8th, I've met a lot of people here too that say, I don't want to hear about politics. I don't want to hear about these things. And sometimes they've left our services, and sometimes they've left our congregation. And each and every time, it's broken my heart. It really has. It does nothing less than break the rabbi's heart, even though people think that it doesn't. Now, I had another conversation with one of our congregants who's definitely pretty conservative in lots of areas, and this person shows up all of the time and has told me multiple occasions that this person appreciates the messages that come from the Bima, no matter who brings them, because there were a few rabbis before me, to be sure. Oh, hello there. Oh, is that who you're staring at? That's a baby one. So, now I'm distracted too. I just want to watch the rabbits. So this person who's conservative in our congregation says, I appreciate the messages for all of the rabbis who've been there, and I don't always agree, but we're going to talk. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it, because there's all of these other things that happen in Jewish life other than one particular issue or another. And I know that we're in Boulder County. I get it. I know the majority have a particular persuasion. And while I understand that, I'm also sensitive to the fact that my last congregation was in Georgia. So it's pretty much the same percentage, just in the opposite direction. And there is still times when people will say to me, I either don't want to hear it because this is where I come to escape, or I'm ready to have a conversation because I know that the Jewish community is full and wide and complicated. And part of the reason why I'm sharing with you that I wrestle and that I'm confused about it is because in this parsha, in this Torah portion, chapter 16, verse 20, it says, Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Tzedek sounds like tzedakah. Tzedakah isn't charity. We translate it often as charity, but it's an act of righteousness. It's an act of justice. Tzedakah comes from the word tzedek. Tzedek is the word for justice. The translation is justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and inherit the land which Adonai your God has given you. And the rabbis of old have lots of different interpretations of why there are two tzedeks, right? Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice, you will pursue. One is that it's just about emphasis. Other rabbis are going to say you have to pursue justice in the world and pursue justice in your home. So there's two justices. Another could be to pursue justice by just means. That's also an interpretation. And there are many others, to be sure. It's not enough that we say it once, though. There is something that we focus on, but the word that really challenges me isn't tzedek. It's not the word justice. It's the word tirdof. A rodef, the same letters, the same root, is a pursuer. So when it says justice, justice, tirdof, you shall pursue, the shall in English makes me feel like it's optional again. The shall says that this is an aspiration. But the shall is for editorial committees translating the Hebrew. I think the text is that you have to chase after justice. It's not something that's going to just come along casually. It's something that we actually have to chase after. And it's in our Torah. And the tzedek is there twice. For whatever reason it is, it's there twice. So we should be pursuers of tzedek, not the aspirational, I hope, I wish upon a star that there's going to be a little bit more justice in the next few weeks in my immediate vicinity. I've been guided by a text which also has gotten me into a number of discussions, let's say. It's from one of the 20th century's leading philosophers who had a huge impact on Judaism and on Christianity. His name is Martin Buber. And Buber gives this speech to Jewish youth in 1932 in Antwerp. And he says, "We shall accomplish nothing at all if we divide our world and our life into two domains. One in which God's command is paramount, and the other governed by laws of economics, politics." And he says, the simple self-assertion of the group. The simple self-assertion of the group. Stopping one's ear so as not to hear the voice from above is breaking the connection between existence and the meaning of existence. So Buber is trying to tell us we all like to have these silos and keep things in neat kind of categories, but life actually, folks, is messy, in case you haven't noticed. But still, when I come to synagogue or a church or a mosque or something, any other kind of house of worship, I'm looking to escape. I'm looking to not deal with the hard stuff. But then what do we do about Buber? What is he? We can disagree with him, but I actually think he's right. I'm going to give you another text. This one comes from the Mishnah. The Mishnah is rabbinic writings of the 200s, and they're talking about capital punishment. They're talking about how the Bible, the Torah, gives permission under certain circumstances to execute someone for a crime. But then the rabbis say this: how did the judges exhort the witnesses in capital cases? They were reminded of the sacredness of each life and of their duty when the judges spoke to them as follows: only one single person was created first. Only one single person was created first, to teach you that anyone who causes a soul to be lost from humanity, the Torah counts it as if that person had destroyed the whole world. And anyone who sustains a single soul of humanity, the Torah counts it as if that person had sustained the whole world. This fly is really interested in this sermon. One life destroyed, it's as if the world crumbles with it. And one soul that is saved, it's as if the whole world is being sustained. The rabbis wrote this of the 200s. How can we not look at other people, and we all come from Adam, and whatever challenges we face, how can we say that we can't talk about it? But I also want you to know this. I actually don't believe that I talk about politics from the Bima. I don't. I talk about Jewish values. I talk about our ethics. I talk about the Jewish community's responses and how we should refuse to be silent, because we know over and over and over again throughout millennia what happens when people remain silent in the face of injustice. And I think not talking about politics is important. I won't engage and tell you who you should vote for. I do think you should vote if you're old enough. I do think we should play a part. I do think we have to take a stand. And I do think we have to share what they are. But I'm not going to make an endorsement from here. But this idea of pursuing justice, that's Jewish. And for many of us, it's actually a really important part of our Judaism. And so is visiting the sick, and educating our children, and educating our youth, and opening doors to spirituality and Torah learning for people of all ages. And so is showing up for a minyan when someone is in a period of mourning. And so is engaging in conversations about Israel and hope and promise. And so is singing prayers with joy when the cantor gets back, speedily and soon. So is burying the dead. And so is feeding the hungry. And so is advocating for justice and learning about privilege and understanding the feelings of others and making our congregation accessible and knowing the heart of the ger, of the vulnerable, because we have been vulnerable too in Egypt and in so many places after that. This is the cornerstone of our experience. So let me leave you with this closing thought. The one line from Psalm 118, it says, the stone the builders spurned, the stone that the builders threw away, that one has become the chief cornerstone, the main corner of the building. That's what it says in the Psalms. Well, what does it mean? One of my teachers is named Rabbi Richard Levy, and he died a little bit ago. And he wrote this amazing, beautiful commentary on the whole section of Psalms. And Rabbi Levy was also one of the 17 rabbis who were arrested in 1964 in St. Augustine, Florida, for assembling in an integrated group as a protest against racial segregation, discrimination, and violence at the direct request of Dr. King. And Rabbi Levy taught, and I think he has some stature in this conversation. Rabbi Levy taught that the cornerstone is the image of the people of Israel, not because of our importance, but to challenge us to consider how we are holding up our piece of the corner. How we are the ones who are holding up our piece of the corner. We certainly have been cast aside and cast out throughout history, and the Psalm says the stone the builders spurned has become the chief cornerstone, the main one. We have been rejected too, And when we are brought into the corner, serving as the foundation to hold up others, that is our job. And in his commentary on Psalms, he asks, how do we fulfill that responsibility? How do we fulfill that responsibility? I believe in our big tent. I love this big tent. And it ought to be big enough and wide enough and open enough for us to discuss, for us to open our hearts, and to care for one another. And yes, I hope we will be brave enough to pursue justice, because that's what God is waiting for. And that's what our teachers have taught us. And that we chase after it together and help save that single life as often as we possibly can. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Let's turn back into our prayer books. We're going to